Hello everyone, welcome to the first lecture of this course, and in this lecture we'll study about cytotoxic and cytolytic reactions. Okay, so what are these reactions? I mean, what are cytotoxic and cytolytic reactions? So we can define them by this way. When antibodies reacts with either an antigenic component of a cell membrane or an antigen that has become intimately associated with a cell is called cytotoxic or cytolytic reaction. So, what do you understand? So, let me give you an example. Suppose we get infected by a bacteria. That means infectious bacteria enter into our body. So, the components of that bacteria now they can act as antigen. Okay, so as an infectious bacteria entered in our body immune system, especially the antibodies, and there are other immune cells like the phagocytic cells and natural killer cells. They try to inactivate or kill this invader bacteria. Okay. So what happens at the beginning? The antibodies they try to bind with the antigen of those invader bacteria or organisms, and then they start or activate a cascade of events. Eventually, the incoming of the invader bacteria or microorganisms get killed. Okay, so these are these reactions is called cytotoxic and cytolytic reactions. By the way, I gave you example with the bacteria, but actually the cytotoxic and cytolytic reactions can occur with other non-infectious particles also. For example, this type of reactions can occur with our own body cells. So, for example, red blood cells. We all know what red blood cells is. So, cytotoxic and cytolytic reactions can get activated towards our own red blood cell or our own cells. In that case, actually, they also cause disease. Those diseases are usually called autoimmune disease. Okay, so anyway, so by this type of reaction, that is cytotoxic and cytolytic reactions, the cells get killed. Okay, so this I mean the lysis or destruction of the cells can be done in two different pathways. One is by MAC formation, another is ADCC. So in case of MAC formation, a complement cascade get activated, and then the membrane attack complex is formed and insert into the cell, and eventually the that cell target cell get lysed or destructed. Okay, and in case of ADCC, okay, an aggregation of immunoglobulin Fc and or C3b receptor binding occurs, which produces immune adherence of antibody-coated cells to phagocytic cells and phagocytosis. Okay, so basically what happens in ADCC, the antibody they binds with the uh, antigen of the cells, and they get actually aggregated, and eventually the cells get surrounded or coated with the antibody, and this coated the antibody coated cells eventually get engulfed by the phagocytic cells and get lysed inside those phagocytic cells. Okay, so in this next slide, those MAC formation mechanism and the ADCC has been pictured. So if you see, like say for example, this is the cell, okay, the invader cell of the infectious bacteria which entered into our body. So when it entered, the antibody, a body antibody, okay, it binds with the cell. Okay, so after this binding, two different pathways can occur. One, MAC formation, another is ADCC. So in case of MAC formation, the antibody binds with the antigen of the cells, and they activate a cascade of the complement systems, and MAC formation occurs. Eventually it causes a osmotic differences between inside the cell and outside the cell, and the cells get lysed by osmotic pressure. Okay, and these kind of reactions, I mean the cell lysis through MAC formation usually occurs in our circulatory system. Circulatory systems are blood circulatory system. So in our circulatory system, our the humoral antibodies they actually circulate. So whenever a foreign particle, say the bacteria or our bacteria enter, or sometimes what happens, our own body cells, like say our own red blood cells can act as an antigen. Okay, so in the circulatory system, this kind of activated antigen or foreign particles, they react with the humoral circulatory antibodies, and the MAC formation occurs, and the cell gets lysed. Okay, so in contrary, so I mean in case of ADCC, the antibody binds with the antigen of the cells, and the aggregation get occurs through the C3b receptors, and the cells they get coated with the antibody, and this antibody coated cells is recognized by the phagocytic cells in the spleen and liver, and those liver and spleen macrophages they engulf that antibody coated cells and destroy it or kill, lyse it. Okay, so now what are the effects of these cytotoxic and cytolytic and cytotoxic reactions? I mean, what ultimately happens? So now this, I mean, the antibody-mediated cytolytic. Okay, so I mean, what are the this? I mean, antibody-mediated cytolytic and cytotoxic reactions. Their effects can be beneficial or harmful. That means what is the beneficial? So like say for example, infectious bacteria enter our body. Okay, so whenever infectious bacteria enter our body, cytotoxic and cytolytic reactions occurs, and eventually it kills that infectious bacteria. So this is a protective effect, right? So by this kind of cytolytic reactions, our body is protecting us. Okay, now think, say, as I said, sometimes our own body cells they can act like an antigen. For example, we have blood cells, right? Different kind of blood cells, red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets. So sometimes our antibodies, our own antibodies, can react with those with our own body cells. So what will happen if this occurs? So I mean, this kind of cytolytic reactions with lyse our own body cells, and it will cause different type of disease, which are called autoimmune disease. I'll talk about this disease later of this lecture. Okay, so anyway, so most of the destructive reactions. Okay, so this, I mean, the lysis of our own body cells can be is say destructive effect of cytolytic reactions. So, and this type of destructive cytolytic reactions mostly occurs extravascularly. Extravascularly means not inside our artery or vein. Okay, I mean the our body cells, so for example the red blood cells or the other body red blood cells, they somehow get activated or reactive towards our own antibody, and they get the ADCC formation occurs. They get coated by the antibody and travels to the spleen or liver, and there those spleen or liver macrophages they engulf this antibody coated own body cells and eventually lyse those. Okay, so this kind of destructive reactions mainly occurs extravascularly, that is meaning in liver or spleen, not intravascularly, I mean not inside the artery or vein. Okay, so anyway, so in this slide, these are examples of some of those destructive things. I mean, so like, I mean, due to those destructive reactions, this kind of disease can occur. So, for example, hemolysis. I mean, if destructive reactions occurs against our erythrocytes, they will lyse our red blood cells, which is called hemolysis. And the clinical condition of hemolysis is called hemolytic anemia. So similarly, leukocytes can be destroyed, which is called agranulocytosis. And the clinical condition it creates will be like our body will get susceptible for infection. You know leukocytes, like leukocytes, they're one kind of white blood cells which protect our body from foreign invasion. So if the leukocyte get destroyed, there will be lack of leukocytes, so our body will be get more prone to get infection. Okay, so there are another two examples: loss of platelets, thrombocytopenia, which cause purpura, hemorrhage. Okay, and vascular fragility, which will cause vascular purpura. Okay, I mean like if cytolytic reactions occurs against the cell of our vein or artery, so the vasculature itself will get fragile. Right, the cell of the vasculature is destroyed, so it will get fragile, and eventually the hemorrhage will occur, which is called vascular purpura. Okay, so okay, so from this slide, uh, I'll talk about the mechanism of cytolytic reactions. So how cytolytic reactions occurs. Okay.